Hi. Now we start to do something that's really, really interesting with our brushes. We get to have a look at brush settings, and we're going to look at color dynamics today. Now, when you first turn on the color dynamics flyout by selecting color dynamics on the brush settings, it looks like at first step that you've got a lot of control over the colour. You'll see things there like hue, saturation, brightness, purity. You'll see foreground and background, and it looks like you can change everything and be absolutely in control. It's not what it seems. What it does is it sort of changes the colour of the brush at random. Now, I'll like you to have a look very carefully at the terminology there, and it's foreground and background jitter. And as we know, jitter means random changing, right? So what we've got, foreground and background, we can have a random change or intermediate colours, if you like, between foreground and background. According to the slider we have there. The hue, it's once again, the hue is jitter, the saturation is jitter, and the brightness is jitter. And the purity is also, it's not jitter, the purity is a setting that when you set, it stays set. And purity becomes pretty important later on. So what I'll do, I've chosen a nice little flower for this. We'll try and make it pretty as we do it. So what we're going to have a look at, the first thing we'll have a look at, I'll change the background colour here so it's something more interesting, like, it's not interesting, like yellow. There we go, up there, that'll do. Okay, so now we've got red and yellow as our foreground and background colours, and we'll have a look at applying a little bit of foreground and background jitter. Now what does that mean? Well, what it means is that as I drag, I get a colour, right? I click again, I'll get a slightly different shade. It's coming towards the yellow, right? The next one's there, the same one, red, red, red. If I come further over, that will give me jitter between the red and the yellow up to around about 40%. So if we have red and yellow sort of on a colour wheel, which I just happen to have, so we've got red and yellow here. If we go about 40%, that's the colour we're going to get, that one there. You see where the mouse is wiggling up and down? That's about the colour we get. It's about 40% between that colour and that colour. And that's what we're doing here. So what we'll do, we'll increase it up a little bit. We'll go up to, say, 70%. If I look at 70%, I should get a more orangey things. There we go. Yellow, orange, amazing, isn't it? Sometimes things work and it makes you feel good when you're talking. So that's what the jitter is. Now what you'll find is that it changes every time I hold the brush, and it will hold that colour until I release the mouse, and then I'll get the next colour, and then I'll get the next colour, then I'll get the next colour, then I'll get the next colour. It changes at random. I have no control over that because it's jitter, and jitter means at random. But you may find a use for that, and we'll talk a little bit later about something else we can do. Now this is the only instruction, if you like, that's got a control on it. And once again, we've got fade, we've got whatever. Now, it's not really useful to have fade on it. It doesn't really do much. If I put fade on and go like that, you can't see anything happening, so it's pretty pointless having it. What it's used for, the controls, is you've got, once again, got a pen. You can put pressure on there, and you can swap between foreground and background colours according to your pen pressure. This is pretty handy, and it works quite well, but you can't do it with the mouse, so we're not going to go into detail on it because it doesn't concern us here. Okay, what's the next thing then? That's foreground and background. We'll come back to the foreground. We'll stay on the foreground for a while. The next thing is hue, and what we'll do with hue, drag down, drag down, drag down, drag down, drag down. What can you see? You can see that we're getting a different colour, aren't we? What's the relationship between the hue we're getting in the two colours here. Well, what it's doing, hue only works on the foreground colour. Right now it uses I've got the colour wheel here for a purpose. It makes it very easy to see what's happening here. I've got the hue and I'll just drag it across at random to 36. It could be any number, I've chosen 36. So what we've got is we've got this colour here, right, as the point selected colour for the foreground. Now what we've done is we want a hue jitter of 36%, right, so what it does, it goes around this wheel, 36% that way and 36% that way. So what it means is the colour will vary randomly between that colour there, and there it is there, and that colour there. That's about 30% of the wheel, right? And that's what it means. So if I increase it up to say 70%, it will go. We'll now get a range of colours from there to there, right? And I'll prove this to you. Right? Bang, green. That's over here. Purpley. That's here. Red. That's in the middle. Greeny colour. That's there. So we can change the range of variation, if you like, of hue according to this thing here. And all it's doing, now we'll stick pretty close to the reds now, because we'll just be going up and down this range here, and you won't pick much difference. So all it's doing really is just working on that colour wheel. So when you turn on the hue and you select a percentage, get a picture of that colour wheel if you can. I mean, you can just go to colour and just select colour from up here in your window, and you've got colour as one of the options. Colour, click on that, and you'll have the this will appear. And if you want to do this sort of thing, you can have a look and say, okay, that's the range of colours I want to have at random. Therefore, I want a hue about 30%. Now, what happens if I change, say, for example, this here? If I click on this, that automatically changes the foreground colour, right? If I click on there, so I click on there, and I'll make it say 60%, here's 60%, or 30% will do. So 30, it's going to go light blue to purple, right? Light blue, purple, there. Well, it wasn't really a lucky guess, I can see what's going to happen. If I click here, the colours are going to go from green to blue. Okay. Lucky guess? Nah, not at all. I know I've got 30%, so I can go from there to there. If I had 60%, I'd go from there to there. And that's how it works. Click anywhere on the wheel. Say you want to get blue and red. You click in the middle of the wheel there. That'll change the foreground colour. And you can actually get blues and purples and reds. Right, that's what you want. So you've got complete control over this. You haven't got control in the way it's going to display, but you've got control over the range that'll be selected. And the colour wheel makes it so easy to look at it and say, yeah, this is what I want to do, and understand why you're getting what you're getting, okay? So we'll go to the next thing. That's done hue jitter. That's pretty easy, isn't it? Let's just draw a line, right? And that's taking what's there, the foreground colour, and we'll change the saturation jitter. Now, what saturation jitter does is it changes the amount of saturation, right? So you get heavy, light, and it just changes. I'll bring it right up to 100%. I get light, very light, dark. Once again, it takes the settings when I hold the button and it stays the same. I'll show you something else we can do in a minute where we can alter all this. But it just says, okay, I'll click it, that's what it comes up with, a random setting, a random saturation setting. I can, of course, change the hue along with the saturation, and I'll get different degrees of colour. Can you see what's happening there? It's pretty straightforward. Okay, so saturation is what it sounds like. Brightness ain't what it sounds like, right? Now, you would think if I rack up brightness up to 100, that I'm going to get the big, bright, glary colours that you see, fluorescent stuff and whatever. Well, let's have a look. I'll put it up to 100 and I'll draw. Holy camoly, what's happened? The reason I'm getting that is because it's brightness jitter. And brightness jitter means I can go from nothing to 100% of the colour, right? Because it's a jitter on the brightness, which means it doesn't mean it's going to be big and bright and beautiful. It means that it will get dark colours as well. So what we can get dark. I'm still on the purple, so every time I do it, I get a different shade of brightness. And by brightness, it means in this case the amount of colour that's in there and the light that's in there. Okay, so brightness ain't brightness. Now purity is pretty well. It's a funny word for purity actually. What purity means is the brightness. It's the brightness of the star. I'll get another page. Yeah, so you would think the brightness would be brightness and whatever, but purity is brightness. So if I click there, that's that. If I come down with purity, I come right down to here. It's very dull. Now, that's very similar here to saturation jitter, right? That controls the purities of saturation. But saturation jitter means it changes every time I click, whereas purity, I set it. That's what I set it to be that saturation, if you like, and it won't change. I put it up to 100, I get big and bright and beautiful. If I bring it down to nothing, I get that. And if I put it in the middle, which is where it's normally set to, that's okay. Now let's look at something different. What we've got now is we've got pretty all straightforward. We know what we're doing. We set the hue, and we'll get a variation according to our colour wheel and the percentage that we give here, which is all straightforward. We've got our saturation, we've got our brightness, which makes it black, because we didn't expect that to happen. But it only happens when we hold the button and keeps the same every time we do it. There's a thing up here called apply per tip. Now, what apply per tip means is that every time a brush draws a path, it actually goes tick, 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 tick. It's like an inkjet printer, right? Tick, 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 tick. And apply per tip means every time it goes tick, 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 it's going to change it. So whatever jitter settings you got, it's going to change. And we can get some really, really great effects using apply per tip and hue jitter. I'll whack up hue jitter. Look at this. How nice is that? If you get something like a little straight line, you can actually do coloured wool. I'll show you that in a second. But so this is what happens when you do hue jitter, apply per tip. Every time the thing writes, it changes the colour at random according to the hue. Now if I change the brush tip shape and I'll bring it into be straight like that, look at that. Quite amazing. So you get different effects according to your spacing and according to whatever you want to do. Now that is really all I want to do is talk about with Take Dynamics at the moment. Apply per tip. You can change the hue, you can change the saturation, you can change the brightness, and it will change per tip. So per tip means every time there's a bang of the brush, if you like, it changes at random, and you get some spectacular effects. Spectacular. I did say I'd show you wool. I'll do that just to prove I know how to do it. If you get a brush that's, say, like this one, okay, a brush like that, and you put on colour dynamics, and you turn it apply per tip, and you whack it up to nice and high, and you draw a line. What's happening there, right, is the brush is that looks pretty good actually. Looks 3D, doesn't it? If you want the brush to follow the brush, you've got to do shape dynamics, and you've got to follow. You've got to actually change the dynamics so that you follow. Follow. I think it's down here, isn't it? Rotation. No, I'm not sure. I forget where it is. I will find out where it is, and I'll redo that bit, and I'll look like I'm clever. It might be angle jitter direction. There it is, angle jitter. Now what happens now is no matter what direction the brush goes, it follows it, right? So it just turns around with that. And that's what I used when I did some of my exercises. I drew wool, ropes. I used that. So I've got the colours. Picked a subset of colours in colour dynamics, and away we went. That is the end of this particular part of the course, or this particular subject, colour dynamics. We've got a few other things to talk about. One is dual brush. That's quite interesting, and we'll have a look at some of the other things in detail. Not in detail, less fleetingly, because they're not important to me and probably not to you. So what we've done is we've really gone a long way. You're getting to know a lot about how brushes work. You can experiment with them. You can change colours. At random like this, you can have a lot of fun with them. And I think you're starting to learn a lot. What I will do before I go, I'll just show you something. Let's clear all this out, right? I'll get out to here, and I'll clear all brush controls, and I'll come up here. I'll go to a new page, up here. Bang, okay, brand new page, and I'll get a brush, which is a commercial brush, like grass, right? Let's turn on grass. I want you to have a look at this. This is grass, right? You'll notice straight away, because you're clever, that it's taking colour from the foreground and the background, right? Foreground and background. And you're going to say, I know what that's doing. That's doing jitter. That's doing foreground and background jitter. And I'll have a look and see if it is. Maybe it's not, maybe it is. Let's have a look. So we'll look at the shape dynamics. Now the shape dynamics, every time I click it's different, right? So it goes bigger, smaller, bigger, smaller. I have noticed that it's actually tilting a bit. See that? That's up straight, that's tilting. That's sort of going a little bit the other way. So we've got shape dynamics, we've got size jitter, that's what we've got. Yeah, we've got a size jitter, we knew that. We can do size jitter. Angle jitter, 3%. Yeah, okay, if we make it more, I'll come back to 3% later. It's too much, right? Your grass just looks like it's been trodden on. So we'll come back to 3%. Leave it as it is. There's no roundness jitter, and okay, there's no flip or anything like that. They're not flipping it. Okay, the next thing is scattering. It's got scatter on both axes by 20%. So what that means is it's riding up and down, and it's also on both axes, so it's going backwards and forwards by 20%. So that's the thing. It'll come down up by 20% of the brush size. So make the brush size bigger, you'll see a lot more jump in it, if you like. The count's only 1, and there's no count jitter. Okay. Colour dynamics, what's it doing? It's applying per tip. The hue jitter is 18. So we're here, and the hue jitter's in this range there, 18. It's not much at all. Okay. And that's why we're getting that. If I change that to be green, I don't do it here. If I change it to be green, we'll get green and yellow. If I change it to be another darker shade of green, I'll drag that into there. Okay, so that's not much there can happen. Go to there. Okay, so the foreground's pretty dark. Okay. Anyway, I'm playing, I'm not talking, I should be talking. Someone who's trying to teach people or show people how things work shouldn't get engrossed in their work like I just did. Then I went off with the fairies. I was really enjoying that. The brightness jitter is 5%, so it actually it gets darker and lighter, which we can't really see with these colours much. And the purity is 0%. See, we know how that works, right? He's done a few lines, and he said, okay, I'm going to vary the angles, I'm going to vary the size, I'm going to vary the colours, the hue from foreground to background by 5% or whatever it might be. You can do that. So this is a professional brush. This is what people go out and use. Like, oh, this is really good. But you people can do that. You've learned enough now in this course to be able to make one of those, and maybe even do a much better job. You know, it's the world's your oyster. Or you can take one of these and you can modify it to suit yourself, and you'll know that you're not going to break it. You know, if you move it up, you say, "Oh, that's no good. It's all over the shop." Don't panic. You know what to fix. Come back in, fix it. Anyway, so I'll see you later, and we'll move on. We'll do other stuff later.